Announcing a keynote conversation, data and cognitive, competing in a personalized media world. Interviewed by Variety's Andrew Wallenstein.
Thanks, everyone. Let's just keep the ball moving. Steve, always great to have you here. Few out there are better at just putting it all in the big picture. Let's hear, the official, top line view of the sector right now.
I think you all heard it a lot today. If I were to sum it up, it's change, right? We're seeing the market change at an ever-increasing rate all the time, and it's putting a lot of pressure on traditional business models. The one thing that I haven't heard talked about so much is, the reality is we all still have the same amount of, finite amount of time to consume things as we always did. So with all these new services, new changes, putting a lot of pressure. When we're working with media companies all over the globe, we're trying to do two basic things. One is to make their business, their enterprise, their architecture more agile so they can keep pace. And two is to help them get value out of this whole digital connectedness so they can create value. And we're seeing it in every segment. 80% of millennials have subscribed to some kind of OTT service. In advertising, a six-fold increase in the next from 2016 to 2018 to $4.5 billion in programmatic. One of our engineers came up with an interesting stat just the other day. By 2020, 1.7 megabytes of data produced every second for every human on the planet. So if you think about so what are we going to do with all that data? How are we going to take advantage of it? I think the firms that do will be in a better place. We saw it last summer. Remember Pokemon came out? It took 13 years for television to reach 50 million viewers. It took Pokemon 19 days. So in 19 days, a lot of oxygen can get sucked out of the room. So if I think about it, my summary view would be, I don't know that we've all realized quite yet that the fundamental nature of competition in the industry has shifted pretty dramatically. We used to think television shows competed with television shows, theatrical competed with theatrical, gaming with gaming, mobile with mobile. It's just no longer true. Everything's competing with everything, all at once, for three things: your time, your advocacy, and your money. And the companies that understand you the best and know what it is that you want to consume and can get you to spend time on their site, can get you to advocate for them, to bring people to their platform, that can get you to spend money, those are going to be the winners.
And in terms of your clientele, I'm sure you deal with a lot of different kinds of companies. Culturally, are you starting to see them sort of come around to the kinds of thinking that your company specializes in?
Yeah, I am seeing a shift. The challenge is it's always hard to change from within. I mean, we saw that in the music industry, right? When Apple came in and disrupted the industry, $100 billion moved out of the label into the market into basically Apple. And so it's always hard to make these shifts. But if we think about kind of the core tenets that the industry's been based on, where it was about creating a really compelling piece of content and then figuring out what channel of distribution you could exploit that in. In those days, there was a finite amount of really compelling content, and there was a limited number of distribution channels. We flash forward to today. There's more content than any of us could ever consume in our lifetimes, and there's basically ubiquitous distribution. So in that world, I think the consumer, the audience member, moves to the center of the model, and it comes through this connected interaction that's happening. So the byproduct of that is data. So data has to move to the center of the business model in the media and entertainment industry. That means every firm operating in this industry has to understand how to get value out of the data that's inside their business, partners, data they can get from outside their business. The challenge I see is that the firms that are the disruptors in this industry, so the Facebooks, the Amazons, the Googles, the Microsofts, the Baidus, the Tencents, they were all built with platforms that have data at the center of their business model. They're used to doing A/B testing every single day, finding smaller and smaller subsegments of their audience, targeting offers to them, seeing how they respond. And so they're competing for that time, advocacy, and attention in a very thoughtful and careful way. And I think it really means that you have to be very thoughtful about how you're going to take advantage of that data, this new data science. We're seeing it in the gaming segment. Our cloud platform has always been appealing to gamers because of our bare metal provisioning, where you could scale really quickly, and because of the cognitive analytics that we run inside it. So today we're working in Japan as an example. It's the hottest mobile gaming market in the world. And if you look there, a new title or a new gaming company can go from $0 to $100 million a month in literally 6 weeks' time. And you can't do that if you can't onboard tens of thousands of gamers really quickly. So you have to have a platform that can scale. But you also can't do that if you're not running cognitive capabilities inside that platform that understand the path that every one of those consumers are taking so that you can optimize their experience. Because if they don't have a good experience on your platform, they're going to go game somewhere else. So once again, you're trying to use data and cognitive capabilities to understand and to predict how they're going to perform, because you want them to stay on your site, advocate, bring their friends there with them, and spend money. And the deeper they get into a game, it's like a lot of our freemium services, the deeper they get committed to the brand, the more likely they are to actually spend money.
Talk about, what you call augmented intelligence and how that works for media companies.
Yeah, great lead-in. So artificial intelligence, you heard me use the term cognitive. You'll hear artificial intelligence. Andrew just said augmented intelligence. I think we're basically exiting one era right now and entering a new era. The last 40 or 50 years has been about programming, right? You write an if-then program for computers, and then you put it on some piece of hardware, and they give you some answer based on some finite set of questions you've asked or things you want to execute. In this new world, this artificial intelligence world, it's really about algorithms on platforms at scale. And the distinction I like to make on this augmented intelligence point is you start to hear a lot of discussion of person versus machine, or man versus machine, or woman versus machine. And I think that frames it the wrong way. I think the way to frame it is really person and machine. So think about, the human brain's good at generalization, at abstraction, at a whole bunch of things. And computers are really good at a bunch of things too. Scale processing, big data, looking for patterns that are hidden in those data, looking for attributional relationships in the data. So if you put those two things together, I think you can actually get better answers, better decisions. And if you think about the media industry and the core business domains of a media industry, so production, distribution, sales and service, marketing, people performing those functions inside those businesses, if they had that cognitive assistant working with them, could they actually make better decisions that would make their business more successful? And I'll give you an example. We're working with Pearson. So Pearson produces a lot of the publishing education curriculum that's used in the world. So they're creating their next generation learning platform. And Watson's going to be under the covers of that platform. So now when a teacher steps in front of the classroom, he or she will be able to teach that classroom, that exact classroom, the way that classroom learns best. And the part that I get excited about is take it then down to the student. So Watson's running there next to that teacher and creates a cognitive tutor capability. So now for that individual student, that teacher can work with that student with Watson to understand how that student learns and to optimize where the curriculum where that student's doing really well and maybe help remediate where they're not doing as well, right? So the ability to integrate that into the decision making that's being made every single day. The weather company is another great example. We bought the weather company. It's basically the largest data platform on the planet. 50,000 flights a day sending in data, 20 million devices a day sending in data, hundreds of thousands of weather stations around the world sending in data. Think about how it impacts your consumption behavior in media. Do you go to a sporting event? Do you go to an outdoor concert? The impact it has. But so we see that as just another set of this big data gives you attributes from which to understand how can I understand how that consumer or that audience member might behave. So we're working with, I also have telecommunications, and we're working with telecommunications providers on these. In the US alone, a couple of them have deployed just massive scale, next best action decisioning platforms that take in all this data. And so now when they're running their campaigns or their opt-in services, they're using those sets of information to be able to make better decisions. And we're seeing it at scale. I mean, literally hundreds of millions of dollars of benefit being gained from being able to target your offers more effectively, understanding who it is you're targeting to, and be able to close the loop on a transaction or an opportunity that you might have otherwise missed.
So what is the real business value for the average client for this kind of stuff?
In the media space, kind of bringing it back home here, I think there's two cornerstones of where we're starting to do a lot of work. One is around audience or customer or consumer. Do we understand them, what they like, what they dislike, who do they connect with, what's their social graph look like, what core traits do they have that might motivate their behavior? What do they tend to want to consume? How do they respond to the offers you've given them? All kinds of insights around that audience member to get to personalization. And we're doing this in partnership with the media companies. And then on the content side, Maybe I have a whole bunch of content sitting in my archive that's not creating any value for me because I just don't have it attributed the right way. So can I create enriched metadata about the concepts that are inherent in that piece of content that allows me to find new ways that I might exploit it in some of these new channels of distribution, right? So enhancing the metadata, understanding what's actually in the content, things like that. A good example, I always like to come back to sports, and I heard a couple of the other panel members talk about sports. Sports, because of its real-time nature, still aggregates a big audience. A lot of interactive stuff happens. It's a good place to look at where some of these models are going. But we do 7 big events a year. We do Wimbledon, US Open, Australian Open, Ryder Cup. In the course of that year, we'll have some 3 billion page views we do, and 6 million years of video we'll produce for over the top. So in the Masters that just happened, if you kind of think about the framework, we got 18 holes, 90 golfers, constant video coming in. Now what we did is we had Watson running there next to the editors. And Watson was looking at the videos that's coming in and maybe looking for a fist pump in one of the frames that tells Watson, the golfer probably made a nice putt there, or something to go look at. Or maybe the crowd noise swells in the audio track. Something exciting happened. What could it be? What are some of the categories of excitement that we might want to categorize that piece of video against? Or maybe the tone that the commentators are using to describe the match changes. All right, so what does that inflection change mean? And how can we get that to add more insight into what's actually in that piece of content? And now this avalanche of content that's coming in is segmented out in a more intuitive way, tied to the kind of framework that we want to publish that content to, so that we're giving every consumer a better experience. And Watson's doing that. Another quick example, just in the oncology field, you may have heard Watson's doing a lot in oncology and cancer treatment. Now we're taking images, millions around the world, and we're tying that to the evidence been taken by the doctors and the treatment protocols and the outcomes that happen. And now Watson, working once again, augmented intelligence, side by side with that doctor, can say, with that lesion, the probability that that's cancerous for these reasons is what you ought to be thinking about. So the ability to actually get into the content and understand it in ways that can help you think about how you're going to get value from it, I think is where we're going.
And what about sort of the creative side of all this?
Yeah, so the key to applying these technologies, and I work with my team, I work with our clients around the globe, I work with our business partners. We're always kind of looking for 2 dimensions. Are we doing something that's going to be innovative, that's going to give some differentiation, some value to them going forward? But importantly, is it also something that's scale? Is it something that is going to have meaningful impact in the business? And I think there's kind of 4, at least what I'm seeing right now, there's 4 core domains that seem to be developing. One's around, as you would expect, audience. So can we raise the average revenue per month for that audience member? Can we improve time on site? Can we determine lifetime value? Can we determine profitability? Can we figure out family value? Can we upsell them more consistently based on different attributing? So how do we really understand that audience member in a way that drives KPIs for the business? The second would be around content. I talked a little bit about getting into the content. So now, can we make better decisions with content, or can we understand it with enriched metadata to do better things with it? What's the ultimate value of a piece of content in our business model, and can we raise that? Can we exploit that content in a new distribution model? Can we package it differently to create a new format? Can we find concepts in it that might turn on a subset of the audience that we haven't turned on quite yet? The third area around marketing and sales, think about what's the cost of acquisition of a new subscriber to a subscription service, or what's our churn rate, or how do we lower our churn rate and keep them more active in our site, and can we anticipate that churn before it's likely to happen? How's our ad sales going? Are we selling cross-channel? Are we doing a better job of managing our make goods because we're doing a better job of harvesting our inventory? All hard KPIs that tell you whether or not you're driving value to the business. And then finally, on a business standpoint, are we driving top-line revenue, margin growth, bottom-line revenue? What about in these business functions? Are we helping get more revenue per employee, as an example? So those are all like grounded in the kind of the business return or business impact that comes from deploying these kind of technologies. I brought a video today because I thought this might help, this augmented intelligence point might help show you what we're thinking here. This was an interesting challenge. The idea was if we had a Grammy Award winning composer, and in this case, Alex the Kid is his name, and we were to pair up Watson with Alex the Kid to try to compose a new song. in this context of person plus machine, what would come of it? And by the way, just as a footnote, I got this note just last night. The Tribeca Film Festival just recognized this with an innovation award. They got wind of it. So I brought the video. I thought you might find it interesting as a way to kind of pull some of these concepts together.
I found music when I was 19, and it completely changed everything. My perspective, my friends, just the way I looked at the world, and it just made me a different person. It's absolutely everything in my life. I'm Alex the Kid, and I've been told to say I'm a Grammy Award-winning producer. I love understanding human emotions because it's very complex. You know, why people feel the way they feel, what actions they take based on that feeling. My favorite question to ask people is why. I take inspiration from all different types of places, but ultimately it's just from living life.
When we first met Alex, he was interested in exploring culture and music on a deeper, more emotional level.
When we talk about illuminating data, what we mean is that we're visualizing it in a way that we can understand it and relate to it.
Very impressive.
In culture, Watson analyzed millions of lines of text, Wikipedia articles, New York Times front pages, social media, blogs, and more, finding the most pervasive themes and uncovering the way people felt about them. Watson also analyzed the lyrics and composition of over 26,000 top 100 Billboard songs, uncovering hidden patterns in both song structure and emotion.
It's almost like having a million of yourself reading a million books at once and a million articles and understanding social media and just conversation in general. I could never do that.
Once Alex began the music-making process, we gave him a prototype of something we're developing, called Watson Beat. It understands and deconstructs music, and then allows artists to change it based on the moods they want to express.
I always say I don't really play instruments that well. I play the laptop extremely well. Technology is paramount, definitely to my process. And being able to collaborate with Watson, he just took everything to another level. The data from Watson showed me all these heavy emotions millions of people felt around the world. Then I kind of started thinking about heartbreak and just how it's so universal and how everyone goes through it on some level. So it's a very uniting thing.
We were two dumb kids, full of grand ideas.
Hopefully when this is being sung by 60,000 people in a stadium, everyone's singing the same lyric, but they're all singing about something slightly different. But they're all there as a community, kind of feeling each other's pain in a joyous way. Working with Watson's been great because it allowed me to create something that I probably would never have done without him.
It's not easy. It's not easy breaking your heart.
Just one last tagline on that. The amazing part with this is now on the cloud platforms, you or any of your developers or your friends can literally go on there and grab these APIs and use them. And do it tomorrow morning or tonight if you wanted to. So they're available. So the ability to just kind of open that kind of platform and that kind of interactive capability, I think, spurs all kinds of creativity and innovation that we might not otherwise have. So I think it's kind of exciting.
Well, we're joined by David Kline of Viacom, Chief Technology Officer, who could offer us, I guess, the client-side perspective here. What drew you to wanting to work with some of the principles that Steve is putting out here today?
Well, again, our industry is being disrupted every 5 seconds. So, whether it was the Apple iPad or the iPhones from years ago or Snapchat, Netflix, the rest of the world today. I look at machine learning, augmented reality, AI, all that fun stuff as also disruptive, but disruptive in a good way. If you look at disruption as a positive, it can turn into a very focused outcome that's very, very good for the company. So examples are in content. Just looking at from this perspective, when the creative looks at it as something that is augmented or they can embrace, it's something that becomes an augment to their creative juices, their talent, rather than a combative. So what's been drawing us is in our ad sales arena, in our content arena, even from that marketing and that research arena, how do you use things like machine learning, even algorithms, cognitive, to really figure out how you can do things more effectively? Not take away from the business you have, but add to that business. Pick up those pieces that maybe you didn't think about in the past. Specifically around content, ingesting the content to really create a better user experience, because that's what it's all about. If we can attract the users, as Steve was talking about with Pokemon or other things, to really enjoy the experience and want to come back each time, those are things that machine learning will do for us. Even the aspect of the delivery. You know, we're looking at it for what we do with our content delivery networks, the CDNs, or other products like his Aspera product that helps us deliver in the VOD world. How do you look at that least cost route and use machine learning to do it intelligently? Because it has an effect on the end user. The best outcome is a very excited end user who wants to come back each time.
So has something like machine learning been a real sort of cultural, I guess, disruption, to use your own word, at Viacom? Is it just so different, so new? What's it like sort of getting that going?
Again, as I mentioned, it's a disruption, but a positive disruption. It's all about showing people the art of the possible, letting them look at the unknown and not be afraid of the unknown because they don't know what it is, and explaining it. I can use the word the cloud. Some people will immediately say, oh, Azure or Google or IBM. Others will say, what is it? It's the puffy thing in the sky. It depends on the audience and how you explain it. What I would tell you at Viacom, we're very progressive. Very much looking to figure out how technology bonds with the content. In many cases, we're a technology company that focuses on content, as our CEO has said. So what we're doing is introducing that to the segments, whether it be content, whether it be directly into a brand, even in that new world of VR and AR and all those wonderful things that are coming next. How is it introduced in a way that is disruptive, but positive disruption, something that a creative would say, I want to learn more. I want to understand how it's going to benefit my business. I want to understand, if I'm someone at Paramount, how I can choose the right script, or how I can look at the outcome of a box office, or someone at Nickelodeon or MTV, on how I can take that content and, as I said, make it a really great user experience across our entire platform, whether it's linear, multi-platform, or even short form. How do you do that in a way that is not obtrusive? Use the word disruption, but not as a negative, as an opportunity.
I was going to say, on the pick up on this point. So we've done a couple projects with some of the major studios out in Los Angeles, and film forecasting, I think, is a good example, right? Every once in a while, you'll see where a studio misses on a forecast, and there's a $100 million write-off. I mean, there was one this summer that was pretty well talked about. But anyway, we took and studios have been forecasting how they're going to do at a box office, and as long as they've been making films, so they're pretty good at this. But we took all the traditional data, so focus groups, genres, surveys, and we integrated that data with this new data. External data, social data, algorithms that can start to marry these attributes together. And we created a new model that looked at, over the last 18 months, how did their last 30 films do, and how would this new model forecast versus what they had before. And from the very beginning, it was better. And then each week, as films come out, now it gets better and better, back to this learning point. And then the idea becomes, well, if I can back up 4 weeks, 8 weeks, 6 weeks, 12 weeks from release window, I could really start to have an impact on how I'm targeting this film, what campaigns I'm running, what my marketing is, am I being more effective? So to me, it crosses between the ongoing business of the company, which is to make compelling movies and get them out to an audience that wants to see them, and the process by which you do that.
So you talked about a bunch of different aspects of the business where this kind of stuff is impacting. Walk us through an example, like marketing.
Sure. So, again, in the marketing and the research side, we get a huge amount of data every day. With that, we collect the data. We have our version of our data lake at Viacom. And what we do is we use some algorithms and some abilities that we've either gone with third party or developed internally. We take that data, we consolidate it, and we come back with alternate outcomes that could happen with that data. So better example past marketing, I'll use our Vantage product, which is our advertising product. That's a product that we've developed and we've augmented to our advertising abilities by being able to target more effectively into the community. And it gives us more opportunity to work with the agencies and directly with various brands on how we can target around our audiences more specifically to their needs. And that's done with algorithms that are cognitive that enable us to look at the data in many different ways and literally take the thousands of bits, the way Steve described it before, and make sense of it. Another aspect that we've been working on is taking some of our content. We've been ingesting the content. We use Watson as a POC to take a look at what abilities it can bring to bear. And what I will stress is, for me, I'm doing my best to say that disruptive word in a very positive way, because there's nothing as good as someone who's very creative, who really knows their business. And this is not to replace, this is only to enhance. So you have to be very shrewd and very smart about how this is delivered to the business as a positive, because if you're not careful, it becomes combative. And what I would say is, as I mentioned, Viacom's always been very progressive from way before I got there. And we always try to figure out how we can embrace technology in effective ways, not ineffective ways. But we continue to strive to do different things, even internally to my networks. We're trying to get down to single facilities, a broadcast technology, IT, multi-platform facility rather than multiple facilities. Deliver a single signal into a new IP-based world that kind of looks like multi-platform, hit linear with IT in the middle gluing it. Machine learning is going to play a piece in that. That virtualization is going to play a piece in that. And there's facets that I don't want to bore the whole room with that will be dial tone in the future. This is a very new world, and it continues to move 1,000 miles an hour, and it's probably going to be 1,000,000 miles an hour by the time 2020 hits. So this will enable us to keep up.
I was going to ask Dave, one of the things we're seeing in a lot of places, I know you've been shepherding this as well, is in the past there used to be kind of a set of CTO or engineering skills in the media world and then some IT skills. And in this new world that we're both describing, they've kind of come together, basically. And in fact, you've kind of sprinkled in this new data scientist world because data is becoming so important. Maybe could you just talk a little bit about what you're doing to try to pull those kind of skill sets together?
Sure. I mentioned the word cloud earlier. Cloud is that technology that, if you want to call it that glue, that has taken things that over the past 40 years in the tech space and put it together in a way that you can virtualize and you can be more comfortable with allowing things to go what we call off-premise, in your own data center into someone else's world. With that, I've been spending a lot of time working with my teams to get people more educated, my teams more educated, but also have empathy for each other. So if I'm a digital media native, I have to have some empathy for what it means to do broadcast, or what it means to use traditional IT virtualization. If I'm in traditional IT, I have to have empathy for broadcast and multi-platform, and same thing with our broadcast side. And what we've been pushing very diligently and very successfully is getting the world to come together as a tech stack. So imagine your linear signal is really just a multi-platform signal. How can I then take down some of the monolithic version of some of the systems we built in the past and make them more enabled so I can do dynamic ad insertion, I can do programmatic across my entire landscape. As the MVPDs move from what we call SDI to an IP delivery mechanism, how do I deliver that signal, one signal out, distributed many? And that's the type of things we're trying to work on the back end, that with machine learning, with artificial intelligence, and with an understanding of a new technology era, and being more adherent to what does virtualization mean, how does the world of, as I mentioned, IT, multi-platform, and linear, meaning broadcast, converge into a single technology stack, because that's where it's headed, and in many cases, we're already there, we just don't know it. And that's the beauty of the Enlightenment, where the light bulb goes off and people all of a sudden say, wait a minute, I've been doing that for 10 years. You have been. You just do it under an umbrella of, I do it for this space rather than the entire market.
Cool. Well, I think that's about all the time we have. Any finishing thoughts from you, Steve?
Yeah, let me just wrap up a couple of thoughts that I said. One is, think carefully, I would say, in today's market, who it is you are competing with for that time, that advocacy, and the money. And then think about how, we're putting massive investments into cloud platforms and cognitive solutions, and think about how that is going to help the folks in your business make better decisions in that competitive world, so that you can create better relationships with your customers, your audience members, and your consumers. But anyway, that's where we're focused, and I'd like to just thank David for spending a little time, because Viacom continues to be one of the firms that's really thinking very creatively about how they're going to use these kind of capabilities, and it's been a great working relationship we've had, so thank you.